1985. Just 17 kilometers away from Agra, in the small village of Balgawan, a child named Titu was born. He was the youngest in a large family, and even before he turned 2 years old, something unusual began to show. At an age where most toddlers barely manage broken words, Titu was already speaking clearly. Normally, this is a moment of pride and joy for any parent, but for Titu's parents, this early ability became a source of concern rather than happiness. Why? Because Titu wasn't talking like other kids. By the time he was 2, he began saying strange things. He would tell his father, "Please take care of my wife and my children. I am getting food here, but I still miss them." Imagine hearing this from a toddler. His mother, shocked, asked him, "Whose wife? Whose children are you talking about?" Titu calmly replied, "I'm talking about my real family. They live in Agra." Repeatedly, he would insist, "You are not my real parents. My real mother and father live in Agra." Sometimes he would suddenly start crying, saying, "I only came here by mistake. I want to go back to my real home. I miss them a lot." When asked, "Then who are we to you?" he would bluntly say, "You are not my real family." At first, everyone dismissed this as just the imagination of a child. After all, kids say strange things, right? But soon, things started becoming far too specific to ignore. By 1988, when Titu turned 5, his behavior and words had started deeply troubling his parents. One day he declared, "My real name is Suresh Verma. My wife's name is Uma. We have 2 sons, Romu and Somu. I have a bungalow in Agra, and I also own a shop in Sadar Bazaar called Suresh Radios. That's not all." He even described how he died. According to Titu, every evening he used to drive back home in his car. But one day, 2 assailants ambushed him and shot him in the head, killing him on the spot. A 5-year-old speaking of a wife, children, a shop, and even his own murder. This was no longer something the family could brush aside, and soon the whole village began whispering the same thing. Titu has been possessed by a spirit. In rural India, this is always the first suspicion. But in Titu's case, his mannerisms were also changing. He didn't behave like a child anymore. His tone, his language, even his expressions began to resemble those of an adult. He mocked his parents for being poor. He would tell his mother, "My wife never wore such old torn saris like you do," he would say. "I cannot live in this dirty little house. I'm going to my bungalow." And then, acting like a grown man, he would open a suitcase and start packing his clothes. When his parents tried to stop him, he threatened to run away. He refused to travel by bus or on foot, saying, "I'm used to my car. I cannot travel like this." This was becoming unbearable for his parents. Out of their 6 children, Titu was the youngest, but he had now become their biggest worry. Finally, his elder brother Ashok decided to investigate. Were these just childish fantasies? Or was someone secretly feeding him this information? Or could there really be some truth in what Titu was saying? To test it, Ashok and a friend set out for Agra's Sadar Bazaar, the very place Titu often spoke about. There they searched for a shop named Suresh Radios. At first they couldn't find anything. But just as they were about to give up, Ashok's eyes fell on a signboard. Suresh Radios, the exact name Titu had been repeating. Ashok froze. If this was true, could all of Titu's other claims also be real? Was his little brother really the reincarnation of a murdered man named Suresh Verma, or was it all just a strange coincidence? The answers would only come as Ashok continued his search. The year was 1983, just a few months before Titu was even born. In Agra, there lived a businessman named Suresh Verma. He was well known in the city and owned an electronics shop in Sadar Bazaar called Suresh Radios. He lived in a large bungalow with his wife Uma, their 2 young sons, his parents, and his brothers. On the evening of Hakkot in 28th of August 1983, Suresh was returning home in his white Fiat car. As he stopped at the gate of his house and honked for someone to open it, 2 men who had been waiting in ambush attacked him. They shot him point blank in the head. By the time his family rushed outside, Suresh was already gone. The killers escaped into the night. The bullet had entered near his right temple, and because this was the early 80s, there weren't many eyewitnesses, nor was crime investigation as advanced as it is today. No one could clearly identify the attackers, so without justice, the case was quietly closed. Suresh's family was shattered. Uma, now widowed, had to raise 2 children alone and manage the shop to keep the household running. Now, let's fast forward 5 years. Remember Ashok, Titu's elder brother. After seeing the shop Suresh Radios in Agra, he decided to dig deeper. He entered the shop and met a woman there. To his shock, it was Uma, the same name Titu had been repeating all along. Ashok asked her about Suresh, and Uma confirmed the tragedy. Everything matched exactly with what Titu had been saying since childhood. The name of the shop, his wife's name, the 2 children, even the way Suresh had died. Ashok's world turned upside down. Could his little brother actually be Suresh? Reborn Uma, on the other hand, was deeply skeptical. She thought maybe Titu had read about Suresh in the newspapers, since his murder had been a major case in Agra back then. But Ashok explained that Titu had been talking about these things since he was barely old enough to speak. This wasn't something a newspaper could have influenced. Uma felt a strange mix of emotions, doubt, fear, but also curiosity. Could it be that her husband had truly returned in another body? She shared everything with her in-laws, Suresh's parents. They too were hesitant, but inside their hearts, there was also a flicker of happiness. Was it possible that their lost son had somehow come back? To confirm, they agreed to travel with Ashok to Balgawan village and meet Titu themselves. At that very moment, Titu was having his meal when the guests arrived. As soon as he saw them at the door, he jumped up and ran to them, hugging them tightly. He shouted with excitement, "Look, my parents have come. I've brought my real mother and father here." He addressed Suresh's parents as his own, right there in front of everyone. But when his eyes fell on Uma, something changed. The little boy suddenly grew shy, almost embarrassed. A 5-year-old was now behaving like a grown man meeting his wife. He gestured for Uma to sit beside him, and then asked her about their children, Romu and Somu. Titu even reminded Uma of private memories from the Dholpur fair, moments that only Suresh and Uma could have shared. Hearing this, Uma was left speechless. As the family prepared to leave, Titu noticed the Maruti car they had come in. He immediately asked, "Where is my Fiat car?" The family explained that after Suresh's death, they had sold it. To everyone's shock, Titu sat inside the Maruti, switched on the music system by himself, and with the help of Suresh's brother, even managed to drive the car a little distance. This was astonishing because Titu had never even seen a car before in his village life, and back in those days, there weren't many cars around. Yet, he handled it as if it was second nature. That day, Titu truly believed he would be taken back to Agra with them. But when he realized they weren't taking him, he became restless. The family promised that one day they would call him to Agra so he could confirm more of his past life memories. For Suresh's family, this meeting was both thrilling and disturbing. Titu had not only recognized his past parents and wife, but also revealed intimate personal details that no one else could possibly know. It was enough evidence to convince many that this child was indeed the reincarnation of Suresh Verma. But for Titu's biological parents, this was a nightmare. What could be more painful for them than watching their youngest son claim another family as his real parents? The story, however, was just beginning. Because soon, more tests, more confirmations, and even the law would get involved in this extraordinary case. After the shocking meeting in Balgawan, Suresh's family agreed to put Titu through a series of tests. They wanted to know once and for all, was this boy truly their lost Suresh reborn, or just a coincidence? So, one day, they invited Titu to Agra. On the way, Suresh's brothers decided to test him secretly. Instead of stopping at the shop Suresh radios, they drove past it at high speed, watching carefully to see if Titu would notice. And he did. As the car sped by, Titu suddenly shouted, "Stop! Stop! You've missed my shop. It's right there. Why are you going ahead?" Even while sitting inside a fast-moving car, he had instantly recognized the exact location of the shop. The same shop his past self had owned years ago. This wasn't something a random child could have known. Next, they took him inside the shop. And here, too, something strange happened. The way Titu walked, the way he sat on a stool, the way he moved his hands while talking, everything resembled Suresh. Even Uma noticed it, whispering that his body language was exactly the same as her late husband's. But that wasn't all. Titu pointed to one side of the shop and said, "This part has been renovated. Back when I was alive, it used to look different." He was absolutely right. The test results shocked everyone. Could this really be Suresh living again in the body of a 5-year-old? But the final and toughest test was yet to come: recognition of his children. Before bringing Titu to Suresh's house, the family cleverly sent Suresh's 2 sons outside to play with other neighborhood kids. The idea was simple. Would Titu be able to recognize them among a group of children? And he did. Without hesitation, Titu walked straight up to the 2 boys, Romu and Somu, and hugged them. "These are my sons," he said proudly. This left everyone speechless. One by one, Titu was passing every single test. By now, the family, the neighbors, and even the media were buzzing with curiosity. Was this undeniable proof of reincarnation? Soon, the case reached researchers as well. Among them was Professor N.K. Chatta, who connected with Dr. Ian Stevenson, a well-known professor from the University of Virginia, who had studied hundreds of reincarnation cases worldwide. Under Dr. Stevenson's guidance, researcher Dr. Antonia Mills personally came to study Titu's case in detail. She interviewed Suresh's family, who confirmed that Suresh had been a short-tempered and aggressive man, quick to fight over small issues. Interestingly, Dr. Mills observed that Titu's behavior was showing the same patterns: sharp temper, bursts of anger, and even a habit of threatening others like an adult. In one incident, when she accompanied Titu to a market, he pushed a shopkeeper and warned him, "Antonia is my friend. Don't you ever dare ask her for money." Imagine that. A 5-year-old speaking and acting like a grown man. For Dr. Mills, this was evidence worth documenting, and she later included it in her research papers. But the biggest question still remained. Did Titu know who had killed him in his past life as Suresh Verma? The answer was about to shock not just the families, but the entire legal system of India. For years, Suresh Verma's murder had remained a mystery. 2 men had gunned him down outside his own house in Agra back in 1983, but the case was closed without justice. Now, in 1988, a 5-year-old child named Titu Singh was about to shake the entire system. During conversations with his family and researchers, Titu suddenly revealed a chilling detail. He said, "On the evening of August 28, 1983, the day I was shot, I clearly saw the face of one of the men who killed me. He wasn't a stranger, he was one of my own business partners." This statement spread like wildfire. The media picked it up, and soon the police reopened the old case of Suresh Verma's murder. This time, based on the testimony of a child who claimed to be the victim reborn. Investigators brought in the man Titu had identified, and under interrogation, something unbelievable happened. He confessed. He admitted to planning and executing the murder. For the first time in history, a reincarnation testimony had helped solve a murder case. But that wasn't the only evidence. When Titu's head was examined, researchers noticed 2 distinct birthmarks. They were in the exact same position where Suresh had been shot, one where the bullet had entered and another where it had exited. Dr. Ian Stevenson, who had documented hundreds of reincarnation cases worldwide, had often noted a strange connection. Birthmarks sometimes matched the fatal wounds from a previous life. And here, in Titu's case, the match was perfect. When the case reached court, Titu himself was called to testify. A 5-year-old, standing in front of judges, calmly described how he was shot, where it happened, and who was behind it. Supporting research papers from Dr. Antonia Mills were also submitted in court. With all the evidence, the confession, the matching birthmarks, and Titu's testimony, the Agra court delivered a revolutionary and controversial judgment. Titu Singh was officially recognized as the reincarnation of Suresh Verma, and Suresh's killers were convicted and punished. The story hit national headlines. Newspapers across India carried it on their front pages. The idea that a murdered man had returned in the body of a child to identify his killers was beyond imagination. Yet here it was, unfolding in real life. For the criminals, it was the ultimate shock. The man they thought they had silenced forever had come back, through another life, to bring them to justice. But even as the case ended in court, one question remained unanswered. Would Titu now leave his biological parents and live with Suresh's family? Or would he choose to stay in his present life, letting go of the past? The answer would define the rest of his journey. The court case had ended. Justice was served. Suresh Verma's killers were punished, thanks to the testimony of a boy who claimed to be him reborn. But what about Titu himself? This is where the story takes a deeply human turn. For Suresh's family, meeting Titu was both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, they felt as though their son and husband had returned to them. On the other, they knew the reality. This was still a 5-year-old child, living in another family. For Titu's biological parents, it was even more painful. Imagine raising your youngest child, only to hear him call someone else his real parents. For them, it was a wound that no justice could heal. Even Suresh's wife Uma faced an emotional conflict. Yes, Titu had recognized her. Yes, he had recalled private memories only her late husband could know. But at the end of the day, she couldn't see him as her husband. He was a little boy now, not the man she had married. So in the end, both families quietly stepped back. They understood that clinging too tightly would only create more suffering. Titu continued living in Balgawan with his biological parents, carrying the memories of another life inside him. He grew up, studied, and eventually became a Shiv professor at Bareilly University. Even today, as an adult, he remembers the details of his past life as Suresh Verma. Sometimes he still visits Agra to meet Suresh's family, but his view of life has changed. According to Titu himself, we cannot live 2 lives. Whatever is gone is gone. What remains is our present, and that is what we must live fully. This extraordinary case teaches us something profound. Life is not always a straight line. Sometimes it seems to circle back on itself, beginning and ending at the same point. The story of Titu Singh, or Suresh Verma reborn, shows us that perhaps death is not the end. Perhaps in ways beyond our understanding, the soul carries on, and sometimes it even returns to finish unfinished business. So the next time you hear a child say something strange about another life, maybe, just maybe, it's more than imagination.